Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex, your social media marketing funnels for lawyers, as well as managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm here in Connecticut. With me, as always, the grand poobah of all things digital marketing, my man, Seth Price, over there down in the greater DC area. He is one of the founding partners of Price Benowitz, your DC, Maryland, Virginia, and South Carolina lawyers, as well as one of the founders of Blue Shark Digital, SEO for lawyers. But it's not just SEO. They build websites, they do social, they do it all. Link building, I guess that falls under the rubric. Anyway, Seth, as usual, it's another week here live on Maximum Growth Live. So how's your week going?
Going well. We're hoping that the truckers don't disrupt everything. We got a bar mitzvah this weekend, and hopefully guests can get here.
Nice. I'm sure it's all going to work out. I wish I could be there with you. I've got my daughter at a dance comp, and it's just, these weekends get really sort of, when you got little kids.
It's a combination. That plus we're seeing with all the canceled stuff that every weekend has like 3 events.
It's unbelievable. You can't keep up with it. And my biggest problem is I had 2 very reliable babysitters, both who picked up and moved to Florida during COVID. And so now that things are reopening, I've got no extra hands on deck. So that's been a little problem for me. So,
I had a life moment. I'll tell you about when I was a baby lawyer at Cravath, working these printers all night. And there was this badass woman. She was unbelievable. She was, she was mean. She was tough. She was top of her game in the M&A world. And at like 2 a.m, she got a text that like her nanny had quit. And you was seeing somebody who was just tough as nails, just collapse like that. Like she could take on like Sony, and she could take
on Russia. She could take on Russia like this week.
But that anyway. So I feel your pain. So anyway, what's going on with you? What's on your mind?
So interesting came up this week. Interesting question came up, and I thought it'd be a great topic for us to discuss on the show because I think you and I wouldn't necessarily have the same answer to the question. And the question was posed by a workers' comp lawyer here in Connecticut, Jim Aspel. And Jim's question was, I've got sort of everything happening. And I have a little windfall money. Now, granted, he's getting it from like a PI settlement, but there are people who could look in their books and it's, it's the beginning of March. So, you've got the rest of the year to go. So you don't necessarily have to tithe away money for taxes right now. Of course, you should always be doing that as you scale. So you're not hit with a bill that's going to knock your socks off. But his question was, what could I do to make, to make some moves if I were sitting on an extra $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. So let's walk through it. Let's get your opinion, and we'll go through 5, 10, and 20, and see what you would do with a $5,000 budget that you have. What would you do if somebody said, "Here's $5,000, you got to spend it on your firm"? What are you going to do with that money?
Look, I come from a digital marketing perspective. And while SEO is not something you want to do with a one-time hit, right? That's the long-term commitment you're building into, whether it's PPC or LSAs right now. To me, I'd funnel some money there. Now, look, a word of caution, outside of the PI space, the LSAs are much more erratic, some up, some down. So this is not a panacea, but I guess my feeling is I would attempt some marketing effort to write off. So if it doesn't work, you're not paying tax on it. And secondly, if it does work, it can lead to something that you can scale beyond excess money. And so to me, the idea that you have something where you're like, hey, there's money on the come, great. Some people take the attitude, hey, I'm going to get a vacation week for my family somewhere that I wouldn't go ordinarily. Friends of ours have done that. But to me, from a business point of view, that is one of the few things, because you can't really hire a new employee at $5,000 or $10,000. You could buy a quarter of time. You might be able to get a virtual assistant to work with you on review generation, something towards marketing. But to me, it's testing something. Could be reviews, could be PPC. It could be, hey, this is going to get me into the organic game, whatever it is, but putting something that has a chance of making you more money.
Okay, so my response is I like that, but I think when you've got a finite number of dollars, like $5,000, one of the best things that you can do is actually invest in your offline marketing, your referral-based marketing, because not that it takes a ton to move the needle digitally, but you do have to put an investment over time. Getting somebody to write $5,000 worth of content isn't necessarily going to turn into
agreed.
business in the next 2 months. But here's what I'm thinking you do with that $5,000. If you took the time to set up lunches and dinners with people who have referred you in the past, and maybe make relationships with people who you're looking to get referrals from in the near future, you could develop some deeper relationships with people. And I think with $5,000, you could do some really nice dinners, some really nice lunches, maybe send out some referral gifts, or take some people to some ball games once Major League Baseball signs and is able to and we're able to get in front of a field there. But I think that's one of the big things, and I know you have a tendency to go to digital, but
No. I disagree with you for a different reason. I love it. I think people should be doing that anyway, and that's not a money thing. That's an effort thing. If you said to me, I'm going to take the $5,000 and I'm going to take my top 100 referral people and I'm sending them a nice gift, fine. It's something you wouldn't do otherwise. If you say, I'm going to buy season tickets because it's going to force me to take somebody, as you've done with your box, I buy that. What I don't buy is I'm going to start motivating, because you can't pay for the motivation. The truth is, if you could do a dinner or a lunch every week, money's not what's holding you up from that. It really isn't. A third of the time, people want to pick it up anyway. You pick it up. That isn't the issue. So to me, you want to use the money for something that, again, if it motivated you to do it, great. But the odds of that happening are so remote. I want something where you get that money and you're putting the money in play versus the sweat equity, which is like, dude, go take the lunches and dinners regardless. The money is not what's holding you back there.
Well, I don't think the money is what's holding you back, but I think in this situation, what I would do is I would take $4,000 to spend on the dinners, and I'd take $1,000 and I'd have a VA setting them up, getting people there, coordinating it, make it as painless as possible on me as the guy who has to show up and sit down.
And I guess likelihood, if we took 20 lawyers and we put them in that scenario and we said, go find a VA, hire them, have them do, there's no system for the VA, that's going to fail. The money for the dinners isn't the issue, because it's incremental over the year. So, it's funny. I was talking to a guy today who has a product. He's trying to sell a $7,000 widget to people in the marketing space, not legal. I said, why are you doing that? Why are you not charging $599 a month? They pay up front, charging $7,000. But why is that word 7,000 coming out of your mouth? And to me, on this dinner stuff, you want to do that, go do that. But the whole point is, the odds of it breaking and never happening are too great in my estimation. And that you want something, when you buy season tickets, I have cap season tickets. Do you know how painful it is? I just gave away tickets to somebody who's a very good referral partner to the legal side. I gave it to this guy who works with our law firm and his wife specifically. I thought I got the Canadian hockey tickets. Turned out she's a Montreal fan. I gave her Toronto tickets. But the point is, we now have a story. It's fun. I can't and the truth is, if you have it and have to use like a timeshare, it gets done. But if it's something that's going to take labor and thought plus money, I'm concerned that it won't happen. So that when you're looking at what's the best use, I think that more often than not, it'll be a broken place and the money won't go in play.
Yeah, I think, the reality is that with any of these ideas, it's all about the execution and getting it done. Okay.
So I want to do with lower execution risk.
Okay. All right. So next up, $10,000. You got $10,000 and you got to spend it on something that you're not doing now, right? So it's not just supplement your PPC, supplement your LSA, something new that you want to do with $10,000. What do you think you would do?
So you're not gonna like it. Depends. B2B. We're going to go join a country club, something more substantial, substantial season tickets, more substantial, I'll go to your thing, some more substantial events that you're putting on, some sort of something that you're doing. But B2C, now you're starting to get that when you go over $10,000 or more, now you can do some serious damage with a quarter of paid search, over $3,000 a month. To me, that's enough money to start really moving the needle. And, if you do that, now you can sort of have a real on-ramp to something. Or you're like, hey, I'll make the greatest example. I'm stuck in some sort of a 2,500 nebulous, web marketing play. And I always use 2,500 as that over under. When you're under 2,500, there's only so much content and links that can be built. When you start pushing into that 3,000 to 4,000 non-PI, there's more meaningful things. So to me, if you had an extra 10,000 and you could push yourself with a legitimate agency to the point where you're now spending that next level, to me, that's one that will pay dividends and is worth that type of investment.
Okay, so my $10,000 spend is going to be something that I don't know if you like, but it's in your bailiwick, and that's I want you to do something with digital marketing. And what I specifically want you to start doing is with $10,000, you can get about 1 million impressions with YouTube 15-second unskippable ads. And so if anybody's ever gone on YouTube, and I'm sure everybody who's watching has, they will make you watch an ad before you get to the video that you want. And there's different levels of these videos. There's a 6-second bumper, there's a 15-second video, there's 30 seconds or more. And they'll, with the 30-second ones, like after 6 seconds, you can press skip and get to it. But they also have a product that's a 15-second unskippable ad. And you'll notice that two things. Number one, 15-second unskippable is mainly what Google uses when they're advertising Google products on YouTube. So if Google's using it, it's probably something that works. And Amazon uses it the most, the 15-second.
I have no doubt that that's a very effective piece. The question is, and it comes back to, I think, the answer out of the first one, which is test something. If that makes you happy and you want to do it, great. I would argue for most people that there are more immediate direct search elements before branding. I think
but I'm saying they're already spending money on.
No, but the question is, that's the real question. And so again, you're saying if somebody is sitting there and they're like, hey, I'm spending 7,000, I'm making this up, but I'm spending $6,000 on SEO. I have a $5,000 paid ad spend. I'm doing all that great. It's similar to my answer on the B2B side. If you already have season tickets and you're taking people out to dinner and you're doing all these things, great, move to digital. But until then, build out that portfolio. Whereas here, I feel like, yes, if you're maxed out, if you're doing everything you can through search, but what better place to get somebody than the moment they have a need rather than hoping that brand builds? Because as much as 10,000 is, when I speak to my mentors about TV, radio, and this is eventually a version of that, you can spend 6 months on TV or radio before you get a single call.
Right. And so what I'm saying is $10,000 can get you 1 million impressions over a year. Over a year. So you could set this up, and there are services out there. You could build a 15-second ad like promo.com and that type of thing, and you can build some really nice looking stuff. Throw that out there, make it run for a year to eat up that 10 grand, and you'll build your brand. And remember, as lawyers, we're in this business for 20, 30, 40 years.
I spend $3,000 a month on brand, right? Yeah. I do it. I can't tell you that I can't tell you what amazing value it is. The firm does fine. Is it because of that? I don't see it.
Hey, look,
I do it because
still runs ads.
I'm sorry?
Coca-Cola still runs ads. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is.
But that's different. They already know it. They're reinforcing something already there. I'm a schmuck lawyer, schmuck law firm, and I'm sitting there. And it's funny. Look, I you know what I would say? The other piece that I personally am working on, I think you'll agree with this, is making sure that your retargeting is maxed out.
Oh, absolutely.
And that may be a lower dollar. And again, easy to say, we all have some form of retargeting, but to really max it out, to me, I'd rather see that than general brand video. It sounds great, but I would love, I
was just assuming you were already doing the retargeting.
No, what I'm saying is I'm looking right now to say, what more can I do? I mean, again, I think there's a point of diminishing returns. There was a marketing guru, not outside the legal space, who's like, here's my, webinar on retargeting. And I just clicked on their site just to check it out. It's unbelievable. If you want to saturate retargeting, it's almost too much, maybe too much for a lawyer. You don't really want, somebody like calls you for a sex offense and all of a sudden ads are popping everywhere. Not that you can really do it, but the idea being you can saturate. And I'll test it out. I want you to check this out. We're going to be maxing it out. The two basics, Facebook and Google obviously are there, but there are all these third-party platforms that go beyond. I'm just giving another.
I used to use a company called Retargeter. Early on in the retargeting days, I would go to like $99 banners. I don't even know if these companies are still out there. I should look them up after we get off this. But retargeter, I would do banner ads, and I would use that because Google really doesn't want display ads to retarget for lawyers, because Google hates lawyers, and so they don't want somebody getting up and getting on a computer and seeing a divorce lawyer or DUI lawyer coming up on a web page that has banner ads and cause problems in people's homes and that type of thing. So Google doesn't allow us to retarget. I mean, you could always set it up, but it eventually will get shut down. And it's been, it's got to have been 9-10 years since they sort of took that hard line. It was great when it first started, and I love doing the retargeting. One of the cool things you can do, though, is retargeting on Facebook, and I'm a huge proponent of retargeting on Facebook. And one of the things I love to do is the minute somebody hits our website, and depending on what silo of our website they go on, they're going to see reviews in a carousel of our practice areas. They're also going to be served up a season of our podcast that focuses on their thing. So retargeting is really good. And here's a pro tip for people in the B2B community. What you can do is actually target people on LinkedIn, but because LinkedIn's so expensive, you then retarget them on Facebook. So you really go cross-platform. So the initial ad on LinkedIn gets them to click through to your website. And then once they're on your website, you cookie them. And then when they're on Facebook, with that Facebook pixel, you can run in their feed. And so that you see them ubiquitous, you see them everywhere. And so for B2C, it's better because, for B2B, it's better because the retargeting cost on Facebook is so much less than the retargeting costs on LinkedIn. LinkedIn retargeting costs are ridiculous. There's a value to them if you're in the B2B space. Okay, last question I have for you then is, $20,000. What do you do if you've got $20,000 burning a hole in your pocket? What would you do?
See, the part of it is I don't love the concept of burning a hole in your pocket, right? I just, meaning to me, this is sort of the small time thinking that you're basically, okay, now I'm another level. And as that happens, the question is, what are you budgeting for? Is this a one-time payout? Okay, I'll play you along, Jay. So then you just, then you have the option to spread your potential tests out. You can spend $5,000 on the brand. You can put $5,000 into paid search. It allows you to A/B test 3 or 4 different forms of marketing trying to get there. It's the idea that it's, again, I'm conservative, so part of it is stuff evens out, and part of it is I like to be working purposefully, not pushing yourself to spend that extra money. That said, it's awesome. Basically, whatever it takes to push you to the next level, the A/B test stuff. I know for myself, way back in the day, spent $1,000 on Facebook ads. It worked, went to 2, went to 4, went to 8. 8's too much, wasn't getting the return, went back to 4. That's how I, did a lot of different spends. Avo, right? We spent a lot of money on that, built it up. One day we're like, okay, we're not seeing it, it comes way, way down. And continuously testing everything you can.
Okay, for me, I'm going to go offline and say, I think if you have $20,000 that you could actually invest in something, I think it's time to bring somebody into your office to help you with your video game. We all know that video really helps. Videos get, people are devouring video. I think you can find somebody part-time who's going to be able to identify the things that you need to put on video, help you get the video appointment set up, get the editing done, all of those things. It may be a combination of 2 people or just one, but
I'll give you another perspective. You're with 20 grand with the right person at the right level, you may be 4 to 6 months of video.
Yeah.
And then, just like, testing. So to me, I don't think this is like, again, the issue is they're different skills. And so it may be 3 months of shoot plus some offshore editing, whatever it takes. But yeah, I like that a lot. Look, it could be that.
I think it's because most of the videos you're gonna film in your first 90 days are gonna be evergreen, dude. And so That's the thing that's freaking awesome. You're not reactive to what's going on. What you're doing is you're actually creating a base that you're going to wind up. It's interesting. I don't know if everybody knows, but I had a problem back in January where Google shut down my YouTube channel, and I had to fight to get it restored, and it took a little while. But the interesting thing is, I went back into some of my videos, and if you go back to when I started doing video, right when YouTube started, I had videos with 19, 40, 93,000 views that I haven't looked at in 15 years.
And this is the most painful part, which is you have the numbers on it, so you're not getting rid of it. Some of it's the biggest crap. You did it years ago. It doesn't look good, doesn't sound great. You know, our earliest videos were literally like hostage videos, proof of life, where you're holding up the news. There's a cement wall behind the person speaking. We've raised our game in the intervening time. You know, two things, and this is sort of like, let's bring it back to reality. Yes, it's great when it's you, but when you're busy and you're like, hey, I'll have my associate do something. One of the most painful things I've had over the years is when the associate leaves, what do you do with the videos? Some of them sort of stay up. If they go, it's nebulous. It's not ideal. Generally they come down. So, and the worst part is Murphy's Law. I have found that the people that were most excited about doing the videos are not always the long haulers. We have plenty of people. I have 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, and 12-year people, lawyers in my firm, right? So are those the people sitting doing kick-ass videos all the time? Absolutely not. Some of those people were 12 years old in their first videos, it seems like. And so it is a constantly evolving thing. So yes, love it, but know that it should be done with easier advice to give than to take, with a little bit of thought. You know, everybody would love to have the Grungo Colorillo, you know, sort of fun video series. I have struggled because I have a guy doing the evergreen content. It's not enough to justify full-time, in my opinion. I've really struggled, and recently had a breakthrough pushing him to do some form of casual video. And it's easy to say, yes, we're going to do this. It's the creative part is a lot harder, and who's going to own that? And so getting a cost-effective videographer very often may or may not come with somebody who has that inspiration to help you do that, because a lot of us don't have it. There are two different rules. I remember we were at a John Fisher mastermind when you were in town, in DC, and these people were, this is when like the iPhones were all the thing and people were doing video, and people were sitting there shooting nonsensical videos on the street. And in one sense it was nonsensical and it was like, this is stupid. But on the other hand, it was something. And part of it is just reps, just like Kobe used to talk about, you know, practice. So it's like, I love the idea of doing something. I have found it more challenging. So I did this. I took Jay's advice. I listened to you. I watch our show. I listened to you. I got the videographer. And now it is definitely a grind. It is not just like season tickets. It's one thing to have season tickets. It's much, much harder to use them effectively.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything is work. You know, that's one of the things. A lot of people are like, you know, they say, okay, once I get to this level, the work stops and I can just enjoy this. But, you know, the work really never stops on this thing. You may just have people to delegate work to and be responsible, but that's just, you're going to open up more time in your calendar for more things. You know,
I could take that and pivot from that to our final topic, which is, look, I have this great intake team. You know, we listen. I'm buddies with Gary Falkowitz. I implement the best practices. And then we have a lead gen company that was working with us saying, you know, our ROI wasn't great. And our way too high a percentage were going to our answering service and instead of being answered by my 15-person team. And I'm just saying, like, it is the sooner that we realize, and, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There are moments when you are thrilled it's working. Intake is one of those easy things because people are very difficult to manage. So every time you think that it's set, you know, set it and forget it. What was Jay's favorite thing? The place pretty much runs itself. Think about all the things that have happened at your firm since that statement. Yeah. You know, that where if you were on a beach, it would not have been good. So my point is, it is a constantly evolving piece, and I would argue that one of the most, you know, delicate spaces to deal with is intake, because it is not just like a website. Every once in a while you look at it, you're like, who approved that page, or what? How did this happen? And, you know, how did this code change? You know, like mystery bunny. You track it, you look, you find. But intake, I would argue, is one of those things. So, you know, you're talking about money before. It's not sexy, but strengthening that, checks and balances, extra training, extra ghost calls, whatever it is, those things, not the worst, because as somebody who like prides himself on it, loves it, knows academically what to do, having that reflect in reality, much, much more difficult.
You bring up a good point. Maybe we got 5 more minutes and we can talk about this, because I think this is something that, maybe the audience needs to hear. I've struggled with it. I don't know what your perspective is on it, but if I were to hang a shingle tomorrow, brand new, with everything that I've learned about the practice of law, and if I decided tomorrow I want to do something that's totally outside my bailiwick, and I'm gonna hang a shingle on a trust and estates practice, I don't know what I'm doing, right? When it comes to writing a will, wouldn't know where to begin. But I could take a couple of weeks and get up to speed on it. I could have a website built out, start telling people I do trust and estates, and I could start generating some clients. And maybe by the end of the year, I'd have 25 or 50 grand worth of business. Next year, I'm a year into it. Yeah, I could probably double that. I could probably get to 100. Year after, maybe double that even more, get to 200. 3-4 years in, I could get to about 300, but I got to start hiring and that type of thing. And here's my point. There comes a point where it no longer becomes easy to keep doubling your money. And your revenue goes up. Instead of going, 100% of revenue a year, now you're adding 15% or 5%. I mean, there's only so much bandwidth in your market necessarily.
I think you bring up a bigger question, which I love, and we talk about in different ways on the show. But I'll take it from 2 perspectives, right? The first is, as you add scale, right? I've scaled more than most in our B2C space. There's expense that comes that you don't think about. I look at it like if you've ever had a rental property, you got one and you want to check on it, you go down the street, you check on it, no big deal. You get 10, all of a sudden you need somebody to do showing. You can't get to every showing when a place needs to be rented. You can't get to every repair. You start, and then you have people. Well, now at some point you have 20 or 30 rental doors, and all of a sudden you need 2 or 3 people. Who's going to manage them? And what you forget is, it's not just that you need 3 maintenance guys, hypothetically, at some point. You need somebody that's a little plumbing, a little electric. You now need a person to supervise them, who you want some stability, because they now have institutional knowledge, they know what's going on despite J systems. The same thing happens in law firms, that as you scale, there's incremental costs. Like one of those things that I have held off as long as possible, stuff like HR, the moving beyond like an office manager, but to somebody, a real person who has thought and can substitute for your judgment. Judgment doesn't come inexpensively. And so each of those things exponentially adds cost and brings down margin. I'll give you the flip side of this. I see this from the marketing side. So you're talking about somebody just starting out. Let's take somebody who's been in business. They're doing criminal, and they're doing $400,000 a year. And that $400,000 a year is something that is basically with them and an assistant. It's nice and profitable. They're taking home, I'm making this up, let's say $250. They come to me and they say, hey, I'm interested in digital marketing, working my ass off. I'm like, if you're working your ass off and you want to now add, let's make this conservatively, $50,000 in SEO, and you don't have an associate, and you're going to add an associate, and let's say you get lucky and you pay the associate 60, but as we talked about other shows, that number goes up quickly. And let's say short term, you get a 3-to-1 return through paid search, or you're doing organic, and before it pops, a 3-to-1 return. Then all of a sudden, you're doing all this extra work, all this management, all this risk for an extra $50,000. That's not nothing, but after tax, you're talking about what, $34,000? And again, that's real money, but is the juice worth the squeeze? And I find that most people, when I'm talking from the marketing point of view, I counsel them not to do that, because unless they have desire to go to $1 million and they get 1 or 2 associates along the way, fine. But the idea that you're just going to incrementally grow that very often is a break point that, unless you scale to 2 or 3 associates, it's much harder to justify that additional expense.
I agree, and that's one of the biggest challenges I have seen with the 2-person firm or the solo firm, is that they say, okay, we're gonna really go all in on this, but it's just not necessarily, they have to think of the long haul and the cost that you have to sink into it to get over that hurdle, to get over that hump. And I think it's certainly something that people need to consider. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us, Seth. A really interesting show. I'm glad we got some of your feedback on some of those price point things early on, and obviously we like to talk about growing. Folks, if you ever want to follow us, you can do so. Watch us live every Thursday here online. Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific on Maximum Growth Live, also available in my Systems Facebook group. If you'd like to know about Systems, please join us. It's called Systemizing Your Law Firm for Growth. And we're also syndicated on the Mastermind Experience, John Fisher's group. So if you're part of that, you're probably watching the show live right now. Of course, if you want to take us on the go, you can find us wherever podcasts are available. Our podcast feed is available under the name Maximum Growth Live. It's got a gray cover for our 2022 season. It's our third season doing the show. Seth, any final words?
No, looking forward to a great weekend and catch up next week.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.